this episode, we're going to talk about a topic you're probably familiar with, and that's tense. Now, as you probably know, tense describes when something happened, and the basics are pretty straightforward. For instance, I'm going to the stores in the future, I went to the stores in the past, but we're going to talk about some more advanced concepts that come up on the SAT. And the tense problems come up all throughout the writing section, but it is worth knowing they don't come up a lot. So you should be keeping an eye out, but there won't be a ton of those problems. Now, here are the 3 rules you should know about tense on the SAT. First up, you need to be consistent with other tenses that appear in the sentence and time cues that appear in the sentence. Next, you need to use the present perfect appropriately, and don't worry, we'll talk about what that means. And lastly, you need to use the past perfect appropriately. Let's look at those 3 rules in more detail. So the first rule associated with tense is really simple. It's just that you need to be consistent within the sentence. So first up, don't flip-flop between tenses in the sentence for no good reason. Here's an example. Hester bears an illegitimate child, and as a result, the townspeople tormented her. Now, it's okay to use present tense when describing what happened in literature, like Hester bears, and it's also okay to use past tense, like the townspeople tormented her. But what's not okay is to go back and forth. So this sentence on the SAT would be a wrong answer choice for that reason. The other rule about being consistent is that you need to pay attention to the time cues that appear in your sentence. So for instance, this sentence is not okay. At the end of the 20th century, internet access is still a rare commodity. Now, if you're not paying attention, it's easy to miss, but the end of the 20th century is the late 1900s, so that's in the past, which means we have to use past tense and say internet access was still a rare commodity. So in brief, be consistent. Don't change tenses for no reason, and use tenses that make sense given the time cues in the sentence. Next up, you need to use present perfect properly. Now this is going to be a little more complicated. Let's start with what present perfect is. It has 2 ingredients, the word has or have, depending on the subject, and a past participle. Now you can check out the bonus materials to get really comfortable with what a past participle is, but the short version is it's a word that ends in ed a lot of the time if it's regular and sounds right with has or have. I'll give you some examples. I have walked, she has talked, and of course there are irregulars like I have run, she has eaten, and so on. So when you use present perfect, you're going to need one of these words, has or have, and then a past participle. And like I said, you may want to study those to get more comfortable with them. Now once you know what present perfect is, here's how you use it in a sentence. If an action started in the past and it continues into the present, you use present perfect. So here's a little diagram. If it started in the past and continues to the present, you need to use present perfect. This will all make way more sense with examples, so let's look at 3. The sentence down here is, Heinz produces its famous ketchup since 1869. So it started in the past, it started producing here in 1869, and it continues producing all the way into the present. Because of that, we know we're dealing with present perfect. So we can't say Heinz produces, we have to use the new construction. Heinz has, that's our has or have word, and then produced, that's our past participle. And that's the right sentence. Another thing I'll point out is that the word since appears.